long before the election, there was always the risk and the concern that Trump will throw Ukraine under the bus and side with Russia in his deal making to end the war. That threat has very much materialized in a way that I think is surprising even to the people who expected the worst. Uh, First, if you know, before go start, the U.S. Basically stated that they take the Russian position in the negotiation as a starting point. Like their starting point was Russia's end point, which was really unbelievable. And then they had a summit to talk about how to end the war in, I think, the very appropriate location of Saudi Arabia, and didn't even invite Ukraine, but did invite Russia. Now they're reestablishing diplomatic relations with Putin, and yesterday Trump went as far as to say that Ukraine shouldn't have started this war. This is the world we live in now. This is the president that the U.S. Has chosen. They had two of these as their options. This is the one they took. Yeah, and this is only 1 month in. Jesus Christ. Well, yeah, I'm joined by Daniel and Alejandro. Alejandro, your first thoughts on what's going on?
Well, I share with you the incredulity, despite that we knew this was bad. First of all, it's very quick and it's very, very bad. Um, More than anything, the overall trend of this administration in regard to foreign policy has been to behave like a real bully against its own allies. Let it be Israel, let it be Canada, let it be Mexico, let it be the EU. Every single country has suffered any kind of bullying, any kind of really incomprehensible statement. Some of them are relatively understanding, but at the same time, the channel and the way that the administration has been emphasizing, the things that the administration has been emphasizing are totally illegitimate. And with regards to the enemies of the West, the enemies of the US, the administration has been either timid, like in the case of Iran, where they have pledged to get a deal done, where they have talked about Palestinians as being good and well-deserving people, where they have, and now with Russia and Saudi Arabia being two of the biggest friends of apparently Trump. So regarding foreign, we tend to talk about in objectivism about the concept of the sanction of the victim, which essentially entails to bring over illegitimate parties to the table or to allow things that shouldn't be allowed into a conversation. Here, I think we're surpassed that because we're not only adding bad people into the conversation, we are throwing away the good people and making the bad people legitimate. I'm very negative about what has happened so far over this month. I really wanted to be slightly more optimistic, but this past weeks have been really terrible to the extent that turning on the news, it's been a complete challenge to me.
Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of being a panelist on the reality show is part of the deal is you read the news, and yeah, it's not fun. Um, so Zelenskyy responded today to Trump's comments and said that Trump is said some positive things about Trump, but said he's surrounded by disinformation. And Trump, we will go through his post on Truth Social from, I think, a couple of hours ago. Um, Really even more terrifying than, if possible, than what we heard yesterday. Before we get to that, Daniel, your first thoughts on this as somebody who's also physically not far from the action.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to even talk about it, really. Trump sort of reminds me of old Czechoslovak joke. I'd have to explain too many things to say the joke, but basically, he reminds me of the first secretary or the general secretary of the Communist Party, Czechoslovak Communist Party, because he was someone who was incredibly pro-Russian, and yeah, it's like terrible. He pretty much gobbles up all the Russian propaganda that there is. It's like he invited Sergei Lavrov or whatever his first name is to like tell him, hey, what is like the most trending Russian propaganda right now that I can repeat? And we'll go to Trump's tweet, and he literally repeats every single piece of Russian propaganda that he could find. Pretty much, it's almost incredible his literary skills of managing to put all of that in like one message. Uh, so yeah, I mean, what is there to say? We went from America went from being the number one supporter of Ukraine, the supporter of Ukrainian sovereignty, of Ukrainian independence, even when it comes to sort of choosing their own destiny, to basically saying you cannot join NATO. You most likely will not be join EU if the conflict the way depending on how the conflict is even resolved, they might not even be able to join EU. Basically saying you don't have any sort of any independence of to do what you would want to do, uh, which yeah, it's like we talked about how bad Trump is gonna be on Ukraine, or we talked about how bad it's gonna be, and it's incredible still how bad he really is. And the problem wasn't even uh, that it's not gonna be it's gonna be like he's gonna be anti-Ukraine, but he's so incredibly random in the way he acts and destructive even when it comes to relations. The fact that EU and all the European nations are pretty much now viewed as the enemy for Trump, not even they are invited. They are like he's literally breaking up every single alliance he can find. He threatened to invade many of the NATO countries. I mean, it is really ridiculous to the point uh, we got with like so quickly. Again, 2 months, not even 100 days.
Yeah. And the weird thing is, as I've said, Trump and generally Trump's people, they're wrong even when they're right. And so JD Vance, what he said in Europe, some of it is definitely true. I mean, yeah, Europe has a very big free speech problem, and the demand that NATO partners pay their share, I'm all for that. But what is the purpose of NATO if Trump actually thinks that Russia is an ally and the rest of the countries in NATO are not allies? There's this scene in Two and a Half Men where Jake is negotiating with Charlie. For people who haven't seen it, Jake is the kid. It's kind of stupid. Alan is his father, and Charlie is Alan's brother, and they all live together. And Jake is negotiating something with Charlie, and Charlie's gonna pay Jake, and Jake goes $1,000, and Charlie says 500, and then Alan says to Jake, split the difference, and Jake says 250. That's Trump here. That is Trump is basically he's negotiating Russia to a more favorable position to Putin than even Putin would dream of, and completely throwing Ukraine under the bus, which we will see when we read this horrific post. And we were talking on this channel about how in response to October 7th, countries like Spain, like Norway, like Ireland thought, what the proper response to the live streamed massacre by the Palestinians is to give them a state, to recognize them as a state. And this is what Trump is doing. He is giving into Putin. He's rewarding him for his crimes. And yeah,
Yeah.
Alejandro. Yeah.
Just quickly, I want to say if people like Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio were on the Russian side of the negotiations, I wouldn't be surprised because they pretty much said, okay, Ukraine's not going to go into NATO. Ukraine will pull out of Kursk. Russia will retain all the land they conquered, and it's like and that's a starting position. What else are you gonna negotiate over? That's it. Like that's the only thing that is really on the table. And the fact that this is for the American side like the starting point, like yeah, you know, I'm not sure if people saw the photo of the negotiation. It's like Lavrov on one side and like 5 representatives on the American side. Yeah, because the Russian side didn't even need anyone there to represent their interest, and they would get a good deal from the American side. Like it's really like sad, disappointing, disgusting.
Yeah, by the way, somebody in the chat says the Russians have those videos. Come on. I mean, give Trump credit for the evil that he chooses to do rather than, give voice to a conspiracy theory that we don't know whether or not
Yeah,
it's.
I'll just bring up like a random thing that I've heard. I'm not sure if it's true. I think it was like an Indonesian president that also went somewhere and they had like they made like a porn videos of him and he like asked for more copies so he could like show it to more people. Like this is what any sort of like leader should do. Basically saying, yeah, show it to them. You cannot like the if American president gets blackmailed, I mean it's that's sad. We are at the like that's it. If you can like do this, and especially with Trump, like Trump did much worse stuff, and he got away with it. So why would something like this now
You
be?
don't know what exactly is in those videos, but yeah, this is not an excuse and it's not true as far as we know. Alejandro.
What else can I say? I think it's hideous. Overall, the complementing what Daniel was saying, this whole negotiating tactic makes only makes sense that you're doing that and conceding right away if your plan is that the other groups are trying to concede. And without the other groups, I mean Ukraine. If you like, this is a tough speaking against Ukraine and not against Russia. If you really wanted Russia to give away and analyze how Trump has been behaving over the last 2 months. If he wants someone to give up or to change its course or to do anything, he just raises tariffs or talks bad about them or tries to claim triple the amount of what he's going to get, and then they will negotiate. But what you're doing here is apparently the opposite. But it's only the opposite if you are hoping for Russia to give up. But that's exactly not what the administration is trying to get. So I don't think here it's a case of incompetence on behalf of Trump, but actually really, really nihilistic behavior of his own.
El Rito asks, what will Trump negotiate when Russia invades Estonia or Latvia? And that's not unlikely. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be Estonia or Latvia or Moldova, but yeah, what is he going to do? I mean, he is sending a message like those who sided with the Palestinians sent them a message. The more you do this, the more we're on your side, and yeah, that message is being heard. Daniel, do you have anything to add before I'm trying to filibuster so now I don't have to read that despicable post from Truth Social?
Yeah, I think people should actually be worried. The fact is that Article 5 of NATO that talks about the collective defense has never been officially triggered. We don't know what's going to happen when a NATO country gets invaded. With Trump in office, it puts even more doubt on this. And if there is enough doubt, if Trump or if Putin thinks he might be able to get away with invading a NATO nation, that's it for NATO. NATO doesn't no longer stands for anything. The number one sort of collective defensive alliance that many nations, many small nations especially, like my own country, Slovakia cannot defend itself by itself. It needs to end the Baltic countries and a bunch of other countries. Simply, even if they spent 25% of their GDP on military, they wouldn't have effective defense because small countries simply cannot handle all that. That's why collective defense is required. And what's going to happen if there are going to be Russian separatists in Latvia or Estonia, and Russia says, "Well, we have to defend these people," and Russia goes into one of these one of these countries, one of the former Soviet Union countries that Putin is very much looking at, especially with Trump in office. What's he gonna do? Are we actually gonna defend these nations? And if not, then NATO doesn't mean anything. And yeah, that's we are gonna be in a much different world, and we are already moving into much different world where world borders or world or like a nation sovereignty doesn't really mean much.
Since World War II, or after World War II, being an ally of America has always been a difficult subject. In some occasions, it has turned well for some people, but it's also been a bloody mess. But at the same time, you had some degree of certainty that the Americans would more or less come to help you or to aid you, at least diplomatically. I think since Obama, but certainly with Trump, what you have been seeing is that the alliances are actually not an aid, but a burden on you. And not only that, but they will ask you a lot in return on the back. That was clearly the case under Biden. And I was thinking that it was also been not that evident with Trump. At least I hope that. But what you're seeing very clearly here is that no country will be able to rely upon America in the future. And I'm really worried about, of course, Ukraine, of course, Israel. But another elephant in the room is Taiwan. And Taiwan is probably the thing that can break us all together, because the chips are going on over there. It's the thing that it's emboldening China to become, trying to move away from its waning economy. And all this that is happening is only going to embolden China more towards Taiwan. So I think this is a call for every single country that it's only relying upon American help. They have to start thinking about how to defend themselves, to create new alliances. I don't think it's a bad idea for a bad moment to start thinking about Europe's European, not army, but certainly an agreement such as NATO for European countries.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly one more thing about it, because today we'll mostly talk about Trump, but I do have to mention this. Europe has been pathetic when during, as Alejandro has said, during Obama years, Obama started like shifting away from the idea of collective NATO alliance and started doing things on his own. At that time, Europe should have realized, no, we have to think about collective sort of defensive agreement outside of America, basically that America should be a partner as long as they have to be, but we have to be able to defend ourselves on our own. Europe has been sleeping and is still sleeping. Oh, well, there is one meeting right now in Paris, so maybe Europe is finally waking up, but it has to be said that, yeah, Europe has been asleep, and if they're going to continue, then, yeah, they cannot rely. They will not be able to rely on anyone else.
I have to say, at the start of this episode, I was pretty strongly against Trump. I'm now beginning to be convinced that maybe he's right, because there's a very convincing pro-Trump person in the chat who says things like, in all caps, winning, winning, and winning, MAGA nation, and liberals equals mental illness. I'm wondering, I'm guessing he's calling us liberals, but not in the way that we actually are liberals, but in the US political, the way it means and what it means in US politics language, which in that sense, of course, we're not. Of course, those are not liberals, but it does show you something that I've said about the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement is inherently, and we see more and more of this, inherently anti-American. It's a cult of personality movement that, regardless of what that personality says or does, and he says and does things that are opposite of each other, they will support him no matter what. A couple days ago, we had somebody in the chat saying Trump for king. I mean, that is as anti-American as you can possibly get. And that is what this movement is. And the sad thing is, in America, The alternative is also anti-American. Anyway, okay, what should we? We have some super chats, so I'll go to them first. I'm not going to filibuster anymore, but thank you, Gail, for the super chat, and thank you, Iron Meerkat, for the super chat in with Polish currency. That's a surprise, but because it's usually in Israeli, but in shekels. But do you think Hitler somehow got access to the Orange Clown's browser history? All right, we had that before. Come on, people. No, this guy is evil of his own volition. Regardless of whether if anybody has anything on him. It's unless that's been true his entire life. No, he is. Look, in terms of personal stuff that he's done, a lot of stuff is out there already, and but yeah, I don't want to keep engaging with this argument. I do appreciate the super chat, but I don't think this is we shouldn't give excuses. We shouldn't give excuses to Biden for his support of Hamas. We shouldn't give excuses to Trump for his support of Russia. Okay, let's start on this post. So Trump says, think of it, a modestly successful comedian, Vladimir.
All right, let's already stop. Like, what does he mean by modestly successful comedian?
Are you going to do the Daniel thing where you get upset and you stop me at every word? Is that what we're gonna? Okay, then you can read the rest of it. But
okay. Like, he is someone who stood up to Russian aggression. He is someone that when the war started, he said I'm not leaving Kiev. And that was when there were tanks going on Kiev and would be there in the next few hours or in the upcoming day, unless Ukraine was able to fight it. He was someone that stood up to Russian threat, who called Putin and Russia for evil that it is, that Trump has never done. He has never called out a single dictator evil. He wants to make deals with all the dictators, and he has no ability to even call anyone else or by sort of like trying to undermine them. Trump has done nothing. Even when his business, he got bankrupted like 4 times. He has no right to say anyone else about like anybody else's success. But I think that I wanted to stop because it already from the start it shows the despicable nature of Trump when it comes to this. And I feel like this might have been written by some Russian propagandist, and it wouldn't have been written any differently.
Well, it is written by a Russian propagandist. His name is Donald Trump. I just wanted to point out, I completely agree about Europe, and the fact that now they're talking about doing something. It is too late, Europe. Sorry, it's too late. You can't defend yourself against Russia, which is what's scary here. Alejandro.
Just regarding Trump's comment, I've seen much better insults, much more ingenious than that in any street in any part of the world. Even for that, Trump is third rate, a so-called Twitter handler, whatever you call it.
Yeah. All right, Daniel, you did stop us after there's not much commentary on that. So do you want to continue and pause wherever you want?
Think of it, a modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the US and Trump, will never be able to settle. So I think we can stop here. Talked America into nations were slow and very hesitant to at first to support Ukraine. Now again, we are in some ways talking about taxpayers' dollars, so it is understandable if some people are not happy about money going into Ukraine. But there's much worse places that money has been going to, and fighting against a country that is directly threatening the sovereignty of every single nation on the earth, because automatically dictatorships have no respect for any individual rights of people around the world. Russia has been killing journalists around the world. Russia has been killing Westerners around the world interfering in elections around the world. If you think that Russia is not your enemy, you are trying to lie to yourself. Um, but yeah, Razi.
I just want to say, somebody here says in the chat, America first, America only. Look, your movement is anti-American, but I have a challenge because I see we have a lot of MAGA people in the chat. Give us something in a paragraph that isn't slogans, that actually explains why this is good for America, how this is compatible with what America actually is, what it was, what its founding principles are. We will read that paragraph if it actually appears, and of course, and you get free access to tomorrow's episode of the reality show. Alejandro.
Well, one of the things that I was talking to Daniel right when we were preparing this is that I'm starting to see the brewing up of a pincer move in the way that international conflicts are talked about. With the left, is very clear that, and this is the case with Gaza, where you see that Gazans are treated that they have the right or whatever they want to do in the land that they are, and because they have some kind of self-determination. If a country is more rights respecting, if that country was received in any type of aggression, that country shouldn't have anything to say regarding the internal politics of that country. That's very clear on the left. But what it's also clear on the right is that what you're starting to see is that the bullies have the right over the determination of countries which are the victims, the real victims, the places which suffer the aggression of bigger people. And that's been the case of all the Russian apologists, but it's also the case with Trump calling Ukraine the people who started the war. Now, what is the common feature between both the left and the right? The common feature is that whenever you something as rights respecting, you are seen as a illegitimate party, the party who should just obey and shouldn't set any rules. But at the same time, if you're the legitimate party, the party who doesn't respect rights, who behaves like a bully, who kills people, then it's all right. So you're seeing, of course, altruism in steroids in international politics. But the thing that it's getting me really afraid is that this is about to become a pincer move where you will see both the bullies mixing up with the victims, and therefore any regardless of which party auspices this view, any single country that respects rights will be seen as the one that it's wrong, and any country that has illegitimate claims or it's the aggressor will be seen as the one that it's right.
Daniel, before you continue, some of you may have seen my interview turned debate with Moshe Feiglin on Monday. I recommend watching it. I think debate-wise, I probably lost. It turned into something that was unexpected, but we will. I have been speaking to Feiglin. We will have a rematch at some point, and I want to come prepared to that rematch. So I've been training. Tomorrow, I have a training session with Michael Leibowitz, a mock debate with Michael Leibowitz playing Rabbi Leibowitz. That is open to all members and YouTube members. Members can join on Zoom. YouTube members can watch the live stream. Depending on my performance in the debate, we'll decide whether or not to show it afterwards to people, but make sure you tune in if you're a member. Another thing that we have for members only at the platinum level or higher, or YouTube Inner Circle members, this Saturday, the mock trials are back. Jennifer Miguel, Millennial Rand fan, will be there. She will be playing a immigrant from Mexico to the United States. I will be playing a self-proclaimed patriot who is protecting our borders. That's going to be interesting. Please make sure that you know that anything Michael Leibowitz says as Rabbi Leibowitz or anything I say as my character is not our actual views. But yeah, make sure you watch that. And if you're not a member, make sure you become one. Daniel, let's continue with Trump's post.
So the United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe. Now, just quick fact check. I believe that's not true. I believe it's about 50-50, but let's take it for what it is. Continuing. And Europe's money is guaranteed, while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization? In that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us. We have a big, beautiful ocean as a separation. So, again, I want to kind of comment on this. When it comes to sort of aid for Ukraine, most of it is given as loans, and those would have to be paid back. Now, Trump had made some comments about demanding the some of the natural resources of Ukraine as a payment. Now, again, it was sort of random thought, so I have no idea if that's gonna be forward. But when it comes to these loans, they usually do get paid unless they are forgiven. I think the United Kingdom, it took them until like 2000s to pay like World War II debts to America. So these things are not something that do not happen. And again, it's something that he could negotiate if that's what matters to him. He could negotiate some form of maybe getting more payments now or setting up some payment plan. But no, he straight up goes to giving Russia whatever it wants.
Just quickly, one of the trolls in the chat says, man, the censors are out of control in this chat. Not a single comment that is held for review so far has not been let through by us. And in either case, oh, there's one or two, I will let them through, but not by you. And in either case, it is not censorship. We don't owe you a platform here. Alejandro.
Well, this part of the tweet is the least offensive one, or at least is the one where I could more or less agree, to the extent that you could say that maybe, yes, the US shouldn't have provided material help to Ukraine. I think from all the spending that the US has, all the things that they have done, this is minimal. This is essentially minimal aid of material that was not going to be used either way. So it's basically giving the scraps to some people to fight. Okay, let's agree with the idea that the US shouldn't have spent the money of its people on Ukraine. Okay, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have and play a moral agreement with Ukrainians on their fight, mainly because Russia is important to you. Russia has been an aggressor to you in the past. It's the kind of people who kidnap your people of your country so that they can exchange it for spies. It's the kind of people who target your cybersecurity frameworks, people who steal from you, people that spy from you, people who go and go with your very same enemies and help them to survive. Let it be North Korea, let it be Iran. So you shouldn't be saying, oh, well, that's Ukraine and Russia. If you are minimally informed, you would say that by any chance, Russia should be stopped. Maybe not with money, your money, certainly with your moral framework and assertiveness. And that's certainly not the case of Trump.
Daniel, how far did you read? Did you get to Big Beautiful Ocean?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that point is interesting considering the fact that it's not that he's saying, look, there's no choice, we have to, this is the best we can get. He is praising Putin and criticizing harshly criticizing Ukraine. He is taking a clear side here. Then why are you saying there's an ocean that separates us? What do you need that ocean for? You know, if Putin's such a good guy, you don't need an ocean separating you from him. And yeah, so it's, by the way, you know, on the other side you don't have an ocean. But anyway, it's really it's revealing because Trump actually knows that he's supporting evil and he does it anyway, and it slips out from time to time.
Yeah, someone in the chat says, but would Russia still support Iran if we had better relation with them? I mean, this is the exact kind of appeasement of dictatorships that has gotten us here. Well, maybe if we made more concessions to the Nazis, they wouldn't ally with the Soviet Union and invade Poland. I mean, what kind of like rhetoric this is? It's this exact concessions that Trump wants. I mean, Marco Rubio was just talking about how maybe we can restore working relations and like industrial and trade with Russia, and we could get back. We've got, like, I think Europe just passed like 18th sanction pack or something like that. The fact that we are still trading in any capacity with Russia is honestly disgusting. But we got really far when it comes to isolating Russia, not still far enough. And the fact that after all that we just go back, we just let them trade with us again. We just let this dictatorship like benefit from the trade with the West again. It's just it's in some ways it's similar to Gaza. Like there's so much that happened, and after all that, we're just gonna give it back to Hamas, or we're just gonna let Palestinian Authority take it back. It's that exact amount of like surrendering, that exact amount of like not wanting to finish anything when it comes to international stage that makes countries like Russia, Iran, China continue existing, because we never finish it off. We never, and this tracks back to World War II, where we supported Soviet Union, which allowed for communist China to come about, which allowed for Iran in current state to come out, and we are still paying the price for it and refusing to recognize and do something about it.
Yeah, would they still support Iran? I mean, you can look at it the other side. Look at Iran's proxies. When Israel kept surrendering more and more to the Palestinians as part of peace deals, you know, that could have cut off Iran on the other side, that cut them off from their proxies, right? Because Israel is now showing how friendly they are to the Palestinians. Maybe the Palestinians will replace their allegiance to Iran with an alliance with Israel. No, evildoers ally with evildoers because they can do evil together on a grander scale. And when the good surrenders to the evil, that is only an opportunity for those evildoers to do much worse. So absolutely, of course, they will not. If what they might do is push Trump towards an Iran deal that's favorable to Iran and that Trump has not ruled out. So yeah, no good can come out of this. In no way that any aspect of it can be spun. This is just pure evil.
Yeah, just quickly, something I mentioned to Alejandro earlier. Who was the last world leader who was, don't want to say brave enough, but who called out dictators for what they are? It was Joe Biden who called Xi Jinping a dictator. Now, he did it by mistake, or he it was a faux pas, sort of. But would Trump ever call out Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong Un as dictators? Or, well, we'll go, read a bit more. We will see who actually he wants to call out dictators, and who actually thinks are the evil people when it comes to these relations. Can I read more or anything?
Yeah.
So continuing, on top of this, Zelenskyy admits that half of the money we send him is missing. He refuses to have election, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections, Zelenskyy better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. Now, when it comes to the money that is supposedly missing, again, I have no idea where that even comes from. Trump never sources anything. He makes shit up. He says he's very low in Ukrainian polls. Zelenskyy is currently has higher approval ratings than Trump ever did. So at the top, Zelensky had about 93% or something like that. Currently, Zelensky is moving about around 56, which is a big drop, it has to be said, but it's still more than half of the people are supporting the President Zelensky and are behind him. If there was an election, he would most likely win. And any other people that would win would most likely not be for the deal or any sort of appeasement of Russia. It's a pretty much united front against Russia. And yeah, he calls Zelensky the dictator. So I think that tells you more than you need about the moral clarity that Trump has.
Yeah, he's taking Putin's side over Zelensky because Zelensky is a dictator. I think Trump yesterday cited a 4%, that Zelensky is getting 4% in the polls. That poll had a sample size of 20 million Ukrainians, but all of them live in Trump's head. None of these things that Trump says has any basis in reality, which also makes you question, yeah, where is your source on any of your claims? Why does the MAGA crowd never ask this? And I do have to say, Marco Rubio was very clear on his support for Ukraine in the past. And where this has gone, where it's going to go, if any Republican senator, congressman manages to reach into Trump's purse, grab his own balls and reattach them, maybe there can be some pushback on this. That's the only place that there can be any actual pushback on this from, and I really hope that happens. Alejandro.
Yeah, and sorry, just quickly, there is a source for people. It's Trump said it. That's the only source they need.
Well, I think several things can be said about this, just not to repeat ourselves. I think that his supposed moral assertiveness is against a decent guy, a good guy, a person who, as Daniel said, has been quite a hero, has behaved like a real leader. And here, the context is necessary. You're thinking about Zelensky against Putin, who is a real dictator, someone who changed the constitution of Russia so that re-elections could be done, a guy that has been in office for, what, a quarter of a century? And that's not all. Trump has gone with the ugly entity, that murderous entity of Saudi Arabia, and shook his hand. I don't know if he has played golf with him. And not only that, he's agreeing something with Venezuela, which would allow peaceful Venezuelans to leave the country, agreeing and giving up anything against the most disgusting dictatorship in the continent. He is having an agreement with Bukele, who is essentially now a dictator in El Salvador, but he is complaining with Zelensky. This is so disappointing from behalf of Americans that they have someone like that as their leader. Can you imagine that this guy is in the same chair as George Washington? It more than angering, it's depressing, simply depressing.
Yeah, and as we always say, you can always disagree with the Western leaders, and for the most part, many of them suck and are really bad. But they are democratically elected leaders who do have respect for a certain amount of individual rights of the processes that got them in power and certain respect for those processes. When it comes to, as Alejandro said, like the president of El Salvador, like Putin, they have no respect for any of that. They do want authoritarian control over their nation, and in some cases, such as in Putin cases, authoritarian control over other nations. And that's what they are. And the fact that you would look at both of those and you call out Zelensky, that's moral depravity. That's basically looking at, some small, I think, problems when it comes to Ukraine and ignoring the giant elephant in the room that's Putin. And I'll only mention one more thing about the elections because people bring it up. It's in the Ukrainian constitution that when there is a martial law, you cannot have an election. You can disagree with that law, you can have problems with it, but it's not illegitimate. It's not like he is doing something that is unprecedented. That's what happens. Even when US had elections during the Civil War, the southern states didn't participate because they seceded. There was an election where technically half of the union wasn't participating. But it was done because in the American Constitution you had to have an election. You couldn't postpone it. Now, and again, I'll just mention for those people who won the elections in Ukraine, imagine if there was one. What happens to the millions of Ukrainians who are currently under Russian occupation? Do they not get to participate in an election? Do we get Russia involved when it comes to doing this election? And again, if you think there was, do you think Zelensky would not win? He would crash any sort of election that would be called because he's still relatively popular leader, as not as much as when he was elected, but still enough that similar to when it was. And even if it wasn't him, it would be people like the former. I had his name here. I forgot it. Like Zaluzhny, who would in no way be any sort of less or accommodating to Russia. Ukrainian people might not be fully behind Zelensky, but they are fully behind what Zelensky stands for, and that is fight against Russia.
Yeah, I agree. It's perfectly legitimate at a time of war not to have elections, which it might be impossible to have in the way that you want to have them. We have a few comments here in the chat. Nastasia says, Rubio has turned into a weasel. That is a job requirement if you want to work in the Trump administration. You cannot have a backbone. Trump will not allow that. And look, what I would like to see is somebody like Rubio say, you know what? I'm going to resign over this rather than sit, with Russians and talk about renewing relationships and the great things we can do together. Ray says, once again, I'd support an impeachment if Vance wouldn't become president, whom is far worse. Yeah, I wonder what the MAGA movement will be post-Trump, because it's not clear, other than being inherently anti-American because they want a king, what that movement is. There's no ideology. It's not clear where they're going to go, but Alejandro, you have some idea.
Well, I was thinking about that joke that the opposite of artificial intelligence is natural stupidity. So I think they will become la resistance. So that's the future of the MAGA.
Tag team from Quebec from the 2000s.
What? Sorry, I didn't hear you well.
Oh, it was a wrestling reference. Anyway, thank you, Enric, for the super chat. Were you done, Alejandro? Or
yeah, go ahead.
All right, Daniel, do you want to continue?
I just want to mention a few things about MAGA movement. I think they'll literally be lost if something happens to Trump. It's such a cult of personality that I don't think anyone can take over. J.D. Vance, I don't think has the charisma. He doesn't have really even the support of Trump to sort of take over, even if he does sort of go. Vivek Ramaswamy, who was like one of the biggest sort of supporters or people happy to sort of be behind Trump, has been pretty much sidetracked from the MAGA movement, has been sidetracked from the Doge administration. Elon Musk cannot. He's not. He was not born in the U.S., so he cannot. I think literally Elon Musk is the only one next to Trump who could sort of replace him as that sort of cult of personality. But I think they'll actually be lost. They'll go mental when something happens to Trump because they replace their epistemology with Donald Trump. Now continue. So continuing, Zelensky better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. Now again, threatening someone who is defending against a dictatorship. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to war with Russia, something all admit only Trump, in big letters, and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions have unnecessarily died, and so it continues. Just quickly, I'll just bring up one thing. I'll bring up a quote from someone from the previous Trump administration, John Bolton, who said, "It's easy to achieve peace if you're willing to surrender." He has said that in the past few days, and it absolutely is true. Yeah, you can have peace if you give Putin everything. It's pretty easy. That's what happened with Czechoslovakia. We just gave Hitler what he wanted. It was pretty easy after that.
And why have millions of Ukrainians, well, dozens of thousands of Ukrainians have unnecessarily died? And I agree it's unnecessarily died. They have died because an aggressor invaded their own country. An aggressor is sending rockets even today to Ukraine, easily for a nationalistic dream of a stupid little hands guy such as Trump, called Putin. This is probably like, yes, they unnecessarily died. This is a guy who the Ukrainians are fighting against, a guy who is willing to use a lot of the poor people of his country as cannon fodder, who is willing to use people from North Korea as cannon fodder as well. A guy who kills his own acolytes if they don't fully agree with him. Maybe that's why he loves Putin so much, and it's not a set of videos. Maybe it's just because Trumps want to do the same. Have a set of people that, just by the sight of Trump, they behave. I don't know. Maybe it's an explanation than some quirky videos that Russia has.
Yeah. I don't know if I have much to add. I mean,
well, I'll jump in, and maybe you can come up with something. But someone says Russia was provoked. Yeah, Russia was provoked. Independent nation, independent people wanted to do something that Russia didn't like, and that warranted Russian invasion. That's the only thing you could say about that. When nations want to go their own path that is not reliant on Russia, they get invaded. That's what happens. And the only thing that quote unquote saves you from that is being like Belarus, that pretty much simply integrates itself with Russia and creates a dictatorship and doesn't have any aspirations to recognize individual rights, to do anything about the corruption, to do anything when it comes to developing yourself as a modern nation.
Yeah, I mean, remember when Russia first invaded, not when they first invaded in 2014, but when they invaded in 2022, it was across the board assumption that it'll take them a few days to basically take over all of Ukraine. And they didn't, and they're losing so badly that they can't, they need North Korea, like, I mean, they have a strong military, but it's not really a country that typically, when you need help, that's not where you go, North Korea. They have North Korean troops there. They're unable to defend their ally Assad, which they have done for so long. They were down and out, and a little bit more help from people who would not need to do this as a sacrifice for Ukraine, but in American interest, not to have dictators, not to have the world run by people like Putin, certainly not big countries that could pose a danger, and send a message to other countries like China with what they might be thinking with Taiwan, like Iran. America is not going to allow you to build up and to attack countries randomly. That is the exact opposite. Trump is basically rolling back, basically with his current policy, saying something to the effect of, the wrong people won the Cold War, and we are now going to fix that. So yeah, be terrified if you're not already. Parting thoughts, Alejandro, and where can people find more from you?
Just one departing thought. You, Rassi, asked if what the MAGA movement would be like when Trump is gone. And I think it will persist. Any movement that has a popular guy can be replaced by another popular guy. It happened with Augustus when he replaced Julius Caesar. It happened with it would have happened with Hitler if Nazis hadn't been defeated. It happened in Argentina with Peron. Now you have Peronism. So any bad movement that it's based around the figure of a person is capable of being replaced by another person, and that's what it's so scary, because it will endure regardless of whomever is at the top coordinating anything. Where can people search for me? They can take a look at the Substack of ARC UK. There are several interesting essays. One of those is yours, Rassi, when you talked about the Israeli peace movement. I've also written about Milei and his character. He's done good things, but I also think that his character is against him, and his ongoing scandal with the cryptocurrency is one big example of that. As well, he has advised, I think, several of the Doge guy / Trump team, and I think his character hasn't helped and has delved into really bad things about the Trump administration as well. So take a look at that.
Yeah, and there is another article. It's been a while, but there's another article coming to the Substack in the coming days about education. That one will be open to everybody, so go ahead and subscribe for free. And of course, with a paid subscription, you get access to most of the articles are behind a paywall. You get access to all of them. And if you're an ARC UK member at the gold level or above, or a YouTube member at the inner circle level, you get access to the paid Substack included with your membership. Daniel, parting thoughts, and where can people find more from you?
Someone in the chat says this could have all been over if Ukraine hadn't put up a fight. And yeah, it's true. If people like him existed all over the world, or mainly in the world, there would still be slavery in the southern states. There would still be Nazis in Germany and all over Europe. And there would be Russia all over Eastern Europe as well. And many other examples. There would be most likely no Jews anywhere, since they would be the first to be wiped out if that attitude was being held. So yeah, if you do not fight the dictators, then yeah, you'll just live under a dictatorship. That if that's what you prefer, if you'd rather what is that quote? Give me liberty or give me that. If that attitude wasn't held by many humans in the world, we would not be here today to talk about surrendering to dictators.
We have a comment in the chat. Isaiah 34. Happy birthday, Isaiah. And we have, yeah, they don't all land. It happens. And Wonder Freeman says, I liked, you can too. Absolutely. More people should see our content. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment. We had a lot of comments in the live chat. If you're watching this after the show, comment in the comment section as well. We will be talking about this again, most likely Friday, maybe on tomorrow's TRS. We'll see. Thanks again, Daniel, Alejandro. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective, the reality show, James Valiant's Constitution course, and my debate with Rabbi Leibowitz. So it's a big day tomorrow. Make sure you join us for all of that. We'll see you tomorrow.